Let's go back right to the very first DOM manipulation that we did at the beginning of this section so that I can show you a couple of interesting things. And once again, let's start by commenting out this code here. So at this point, we learned basically all we needed to learn about fundamental JavaScript. So we no longer need all that console.log that we had there. And so let's go back here to the top. So this is where we started at the very beginning of the section to do some DOM manipulation, actually. So remember from the previous lecture how I told you that the DOM is basically a tree where each HTML element is represented as an object. And we select these objects using query selector as we did here. And so what that means is that each of these elements here is actually a DOM element, and it is also an object. And if it's an object, we can of course inspect it in a console. So let me show that to you now here, just for the sake of curiosity. So we selected this button here, which remember is this button here. And so here we get exactly that button. So button, and then with the classes of button, button large, and button open. Now, usually when we hover over this element, it should become visible. Let me try to reload this. And yeah, so now what we get here, so this button right here looks exactly the same way as it looks here. So let me find some space. So remember that here in the inspector, when we hover over one of the elements, it actually becomes visible here on the page. And so here, the same thing is happening, or at least it should happen with this element here. Let's try to reload one more time, because this is quite strange. Okay, so that doesn't work, but it doesn't really matter. Maybe for you, when you hover this element, then it will become selected there on the page. So yeah, that doesn't work, but it's not a problem. So that has nothing to do with JavaScript. It's simply because something here is happening with the browser. Yeah, no big deal anyway. Now, if we wanted to actually inspect this entire element here, so this entire object right in the DOM, we could, instead of console.log, write console.dir, or dir, so which stands for directory, I think. And so now we can click on this triangle, and then we get all of these different properties here that are part of each DOM object. So all this stuff here. But let me show you some of the properties that we have used. For example, here we have the class list. And so remember, here we used, not on the button, but on the form, the class list property. And so that is actually coming from the DOM object. So again, each HTML element is basically converted to a DOM JavaScript object. And so there we have these properties and also these methods. So here we have that class list, and indeed we have btn, btn large, and btn open. So the three classes that we have there. And here we can open this even further, and here we can then actually find the methods. So we have class list dot remove dot add, and so here they are. So everything is part of this object. We also have another important one, which is inner HTML, inner text. We have the text content property, I'm sure, somewhere here at the end. Yeah, indeed, here it is. And so this was just to show you that really the DOM exists basically in the browser, and we can take a look at it if we want. Now, before moving on to the next section, I just wanted to show you one more property similar to text content. And for that, I want to actually select this entire list here. So let's move here to HTML. And so just to find out what's the name of that list. Oh, and actually we didn't give this list any class yet. So we didn't need to format or to style it. But now we will need to select it in JavaScript. And so let's add a class here. So class facts list. Let's copy that. And let's come here. So let's call this facts list equals document. And then we call the query selector method. And there we go. So what I want to do now is to basically remove all the elements that are inside of this list as soon as we load up the page. And the reason I want to do that is that so in the next lecture, we will then, based on some data, create new DOM elements here. So basically create new HTML and starting with a clean slate. So where this element is completely empty. Now, of course, we could just go here into index.html and remove all the list items, but that wouldn't be as much fun, right? So I want to keep this HTML here, and I want to then use JavaScript to clear out this element. So when do we want to do this? Well, let's just first actually do it when we click this button, just so that we can, again, use this add event listener here. So of course that won't make a lot of sense, but we will then move it to where it makes sense later. So actually this is very easy. We can just say facts list, which is this element that we just selected, and then we set the inner HTML equal nothing. So basically equal an empty string. And so if we save this now, and for some reason it's taking a lot of time to load, but yeah, once we click this now, you see that it is empty. And coming here, indeed, where is that? Here in main, in the section in the UL. And you see it's completely empty now. Of course, even while here in the HTML, there's still some content in there. So again, we didn't manipulate the original HTML file, but we did manipulate the DOM, which is, again, basically a JavaScript representation of what we have in the HTML in the beginning, but also, of course, it then includes our manipulations. Okay, let's cut this and actually let's place it out here, because the code that is out here, not inside of any function, runs immediately at the beginning. And so that's where we want to clear that list immediately, right? So let's go down here. And yeah, so now once we load the page, there is nothing. So the list is empty now, and it's ready to receive some new list items that are based on some data. And so that is exactly what we will do in the next video.